Settle in and cozy up. We're about to dig in. Let's get ready to go. Cheers. Welcome to our weekly coffee meeting. I'm excited that you're here. If you could have coffee with anyone in the world, who would it be? Dead or alive? My guess is that you picked somebody interesting or funny or talented, maybe even famous. Well, we're going to do the same thing right here, right now, with somebody interesting that you may or may not already know about. I started these weekly gatherings because I realized that I was meeting fabulous, interesting people, founders, CEOs, executives. I was getting all of these aha moments and little gems from them, but I realized, why should I be the only one getting all of this goodness? Way more seats should be at this table, which is why I decided every single week we should get together and we should sit down with these amazing people, steal all their secrets, and use it in our own lives. If you're new here, there's time for you to grab something warm or cold. If there's wine, I won't tell. And get settled in as we get ready to learn about interesting people with awesome jobs and lots of tips and tricks for us to steal. 2 pieces of homework before we start. 1, follow me here on LinkedIn if you haven't already. That way you can stay up to date as things happen. And number 2, get ready with questions because I want you to be able to ask your questions in real time here with me. That's right, you have a seat at this table too, which means I'm counting on you to ask amazing questions, make good points, and be in this conversation with me. Of course, you could be a bystander, but that's never as fun. If you haven't already, let me know where you're coming in from. Maybe what's in your cup, how the weather is outside. I want to know exactly where you are in the world and exactly what you're experiencing so I can share where I am too. And then it can feel like we're in the same cozy coffee shop together. I'm finishing up making my tea now and I'm getting ready to settle in with you. Happy Wednesday, friend. It is so good to see you. I'm really excited for our coffee session this week because, man, oh man, I'm excited about it and it's going to be really helpful for me. So selfishly, I hope it is really helpful for you as well. If you're new here, welcome. We meet here every single Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern with something spicy fun in our cups. Today, I'm coming in from Austin, Texas with some green tea. I went first, so you didn't have to. But if you haven't already, say hi in the chat. That is where the party is at. Again, we are all sitting at this cozy coffee shop together, which means you are not getting wisdom from just me and Jan. You are getting it from Giacomo and Sean and Rachel and Kelly and Shelby and Jeff and everybody who's rocking out and hanging out in the chat room. We are all in this together, learning and growing and getting better with one another. As I said before, I'm really excited about today's coffee session because I know just for me personally, I have really been focused in 2023 on my leadership skills and really building up that sort of resilience muscle, that kind of uncomfortable growth muscle that you have to expand and dig into when you want to develop as a leader. And so as I was thinking about this subject and kind of honing in on it a little bit more, started to talk to other people about it, people are like, yeah, but Kim, how do we grow this muscle? Like, how do we think about building our resilience and really stepping into leadership roles in a meaningful way? And so when I stumbled on the work of Jan Rutherford, I was like, oh, like the skies opened up. I was like, this is how we do it. Because Jan is a former Green Beret, which if you are not from the United States, just know it's a pretty high position in our military over here. He is the founder of Self-Reliant Leadership, which is an executive coaching group. He's also a keynote speaker speaking on resilient leadership. And he also hosts, which I thought was really cool, these wilderness expeditions called Crucible Weekends, where he takes leaders and former military special veterans and takes them out to do these really hard physical exercises and trips, which I was just like, okay, maybe one day. Until then, my vacations are going to be spent on the beach, but I like it. I like the idea of really using time off to build yourself. He's also a fellow LinkedIn learning instructor and co-host of the Leadership Podcast. And a little birdie told me that he has a book coming out next summer. So we're going to get the full scoop on that before the rest of the world gets it. And so please help me welcome, say a big hi to Ellen and Kelly and Giacomo and everybody. Help me by raising your cups and inviting Jan to coffee with us.
Hey, Kim.
How's it going?
Thanks for having me. I've been doing a podcast for 7 years, and I can tell you are a pro. That was a great introduction. Thank you for having me on your show. I've already learned a ton of things I need to do better at. So it's really nice to be here. And I've got my Bewley's tea from Ireland.
I love it. Well, we are so excited to have you here. And I feel like I have a zillion questions to talk to you about. But kind of first and foremost, I really feel like you are one of the few people that I've heard kind of in the space of leadership that has used the term self-reliant. Most of the time we hear about leadership in more of a, how do I lean in or, be more aggressive, but self-reliant, I feel like is a very unique term. And I'm wondering how you came about defining your work by this term, or what does it mean to you?
Yeah. So it came to me through my experience in the military. Imagine, if you will, and again, welcome everybody. I'm so glad you're here and honored, and from all over the place. And I'm here in sunny Colorado. But imagine, if you will, you're on an expedition climbing up a mountain, and let's pretend there's no snow. It's nice and warm and flowers, and it's beautiful. You're with a team, and everybody's counting on you to have been prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, that, you're carrying all your stuff, your water, everything you're going to need. And, everybody's counting on you to be squared away. Well, that's the absolute bare minimum, is to be squared away, self-reliant. Because when you're self-reliant as a leader, then you can focus your attention on helping others, because maybe not everybody else is going to be able to carry all their weight or that they prepared. And the same thing goes on in the business world. We have a goal, we have a pace that we need to go at. Not everybody can go 90 miles an hour every single day. Not everybody can carry the same amount of water every single day. But as a leader, we raised our hand and said, hey, I'll take on this responsibility. I will make more sacrifices than other people. I will exhibit more discipline to be squared away, mentally, emotionally, and physically. I owe that to my team. I get to serve other people.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up this concept around sacrifice as a leader, because I was listening to a podcast, our mutual friend Kwame's podcast that you were on, and just like allow me to geek out for a second. I feel like when we've heard about sacrifice as a leader, at least for me, I'm like, yeah, you stay later, or you come in earlier, you work harder, you like push. And you said something that really, like, I had an aha moment. I had like an Oprah moment. Jan was my like Oprah for this moment, because you told this story on this podcast, and I'll fill everybody in if they didn't listen to the podcast. You told a story about a group of individuals, I think they were maybe in the military, who were building a bridge across this little river. Yeah. And as the leader's like, I want my people to know that I'm in the trenches with them, and I'm, we're mano y mano, like I'm in there with you. I'm not above you in any way. And long story short, they built the bridge in the wrong place. And by the time the leader actually got up on the hill and looked, it was like, ruh-roh. Yeah. We built the bridge in the wrong place because I wasn't up on the hill really helping navigate and say, actually, it's supposed to be like, 30 feet to the left. And you said, which really opened my eyes, that sometimes being a leader is sacrificing your ability to be liked and to feel like you're kind of in there with everybody because you have to remove yourself. And I just wanted to say, like, wow, can you expand on that, or just speak to that a little more? Because that was such an aha moment for me.
You recited the story perfectly. It literally is about setting your pride and ego aside, and it's not about you. And as much as you want to prove to everybody, hey, I can get in the dirt and I can do the work. What they want you to do is do the right thing. That's what they want. And as an executive coach, I spend so much time in two areas. One is helping people manage their time better and be focused. And a lot of that literally is self-discipline. And the other one is, developing people, coaching them, encouraging them, having difficult conversations. But that part about that discipline about time management is you've got to role model what you expect from other people. And I can't tell you how many times in the last 6 months I've said to people, hey, describe somebody you want to, that you would have confidence in following. And the person will say, well, they're calm, cool, collected. I know everything's going to be okay. And then I'll say, okay, let's look in the mirror. What do you see? And they'll say, my hair is on fire. Like, well, and then I say, ask yourself, am I easy to follow? Because nobody wants to follow somebody that's absolutely frenetic. We are all having difficult times at home, at work. I mean, things are difficult. I mean, that's the thing that we all share at this moment. We all have our crosses to bear. There's difficulties. The last thing that we need is somebody that's just absolutely frenetic, and that doesn't give us hope and positivity and optimism that things are going to get better. We've got to take a step back and basically say, where's the right place for the bridge before we just go crazy with exerting energy and wasted energy, if you will.
And I love this point about really asking ourselves, are we someone who we would want to follow? If we kind of look in the mirror and answer that question as like well, not so much, like that's a no. What are one or two things, Jan, that we could sort of instantly implement, or like one or two things that we've recognized that there's a problem? We're not the one that we would follow into the darkness. What's one or two things we can do to improve that?
Well, I'll give you three, but I want to start off by saying, giving you a big picture one. And that is, I think all of us have a personal responsibility, no matter what we're doing, to find purpose and meaning in our work. If we can't find purpose and meaning, we're missing the most important ingredient, which is passion. And we've all realized over the last 3 years, life's too short. And it does not matter what you do. I think you can find purpose and meaning, because work is about serving others. And it's not just about trading time for money. And an older generation could blame a young generation and say, blame it on that. I put the responsibility on leaders to create an environment where people can find purpose and meaning. It doesn't matter if they're making rubber hoses or, they're building lawnmowers. I mean, it doesn't matter. The work that we do is helping others in some way, shape, or form. And I think we've got to figure that out. And again, that's why I believe we're here, is to serve. But the three things I would put out there is, again, from a mental, emotional, and physical perspective, being squared away mentally, means that you have that passion, you have that curiosity, that you're always focused on in continuous improvement. You're trying to figure out ways to get better at whatever it is you do, soft skills, hard skills. The second is being squared away emotionally, which is hard these days. And I think a lot of that comes down to self-awareness. We all think we're self-aware. We all think we're good drivers. As far as driving, we're average. Most of us are average. That's average. Self-awareness, most of us are not as self-aware as we could be. And the hard thing is to ask people for advice and suggestions and even feedback. And again, to have the relationships where people feel comfortable giving us, that counsel. And the third thing is, and I remember this as a CEO, I thought, I don't know how you could be a CEO if you're not physically fit. I don't know how you could have the stamina, because at the end of the day, you're physically and emotionally and mentally absolutely drained. So, I think you owe it to your colleagues. I think you owe it to your family to create white space in your calendar for wellness, whatever that might be for you.
I love this idea of really creating this white space. I think for somebody like me, perhaps that's a little bit of a busy bee. White space feels unproductive. So we just want to fill it. And I know that that's something that you also talk a lot about, that you do not get paid to be busy. You
Right.
get paid for results. And so I'm curious, this point that Jeff is making about a leader who's either shifting culture or maybe joining a new team with a new culture, or maybe they're battling remote work where the culture is not great at all, or you're home
Yeah.
alone. How can you continue to, I guess, build that leadership muscle?
Yeah, it's a great question, and Jeff, I appreciate it. And I was with a team earlier this week, and the question I was getting, it was almost like, I feel like if I ask people to work, I need to apologize because they joined this company for all this kumbaya stuff, and now things are hard in the market, and we're not going to outsmart our competitors. That's not going to happen. We're going to have to outwork them. I'm going to have to ask my people to work really hard and to have activity. And, so when we say culture, that's such a hard word because there's so
I
many
know.
definitions. I like to think of it as, what's the environment in which I work? And I think at the highest level, a leader creates an environment, designs an environment where they get the best behaviors from everybody. And by best behaviors, I mean you get stuff done, you produce, and you're efficient. And it's the golden rule. You treat each other as you'd like to be treated, and you don't forget at the end of the day, it's all about, who are we doing this for? There's a customer. So Jeff, where I would go back to as far as culture or team is all about three things. One, do people absolutely understand the expectation? Both how the behaviors that are aligned with the core values and what they need to produce. Do they know where they stand with you? Hey, great job. Hey, here's some things we're working on. And are there consequences for performance? Are there rewards, recognition, awards, attaboys, attagirls, whatever it is? Are we catching people doing things right? And if not, are we starting this way, figuratively, not literally anymore, but figuratively with our arm around somebody and saying, hey, you said you're going to do this. You let me down, you let yourself down, you don't have to put someone on a PIP, a performance improvement plan right away, but literally, being honest and compassionate and candid about people's performance is what they expect. And that's hard. So expectations clear, where they stand clear, and are there consequences for great performance, mediocre performance, or poor performance? Because again, going back to the climbing, if somebody's carrying 20 gallons of water and somebody's carrying 1 gallon of water, that's not fair. That's not fair to the team. And once in a while, it's okay. We all have bad days, but it can't be routine that, somebody's always getting up there going, I didn't pack any food. I didn't pack any water. I don't have a jacket. That's not being very self-reliant.
It's not being self-reliant. And I also have this sort of love-hate relationship when we start to talk about other people and culture, because as we know, like, it's nothing we can control. I mean, I have a little Harry Potter wand here. Sometimes I wish I could wave it around and control people, but I cannot. The only thing I can control is myself. And I feel like my question is sort of symbiotic with Kelly's, which is, if the only thing that we can control is ourselves, we can't control other people. We are a party of one coming into this.
Yep.
You've worked with thousands of, some of the top leaders in the country. What are one or two things that you really feel like you tell a lot of people to avoid? Like, just do not pass go. Whatever you do, like, don't, like, try to avoid these kind of stumbling areas for leaders.
Well, it's a great question. It's a hard question, but if I had to nail it down to one, I would say you're addicted to busy. You are addicted to busy. And on the Crucible expeditions we run, we do a solo challenge where we put people out by themselves with a journal for 3 hours. Go be by yourself for 3 hours. For some people, that's really hard to be, alone in their thoughts. And a lot of them come back with epiphanies, or they'll come back and say, I can't believe I don't give myself time. I mean, even 15 minutes, I don't give myself time to rest, recharge, refocus, re-energize, whatever it might be. And so, as much as we'll be, things in our calendar will be sacred because we've made commitments to other people. What about the commitment to you? If you're not squared away, you're not going to be able to help anybody. And, part of it is making sure you get things right in your life, in their life. You put the bridge in the right spot. And sometimes you've got to take a step back from that. And so to me, the big challenge in the business world, if you're leading people, is how often do I get up on the hill and look and figure out, hey, are we doing the right stuff? And how often do I get down in the trenches one-on-one and developing my people? Because if I don't develop my people, I can't delegate to go sit on the hill. And so that's the dilemma is they don't delegate because they haven't developed their people, or they don't trust themselves or their people. So trust is underlying all that, trust in themselves first.
And it's a good sort of baby step for that. Maybe just blocking, like, I don't want to say like, oh, a whole day, because people are like, overwhelmed. But is it maybe just like an hour a week? Or like, how do you, for leaders that might be addicted to busy, what is a good sort of baby step to start to break that habit a little bit?
Well, the hard part is, I remember as a CEO, I felt like I had the least amount of control I've ever had in my life over my time or anything. So, as you move up, it gets more challenging. And so if you can't set boundaries when you're early in your career, you're never going to be able to set them. Ideally for me, and I'm not perfect at this, but I really try to only book 4 hours a day with other people.
Yep.
Most of the time I don't hit that, but if I'm only booking 4 hours, I've got plenty of white space to because every meeting I have, I need to prep for and I need to follow up. And then there might be a workshop in a week that I need to spend time on, or like you said, a book. So if I'm not creating that white space, and again, I'm not any different as an entrepreneur than anybody else, that's working for a small, medium, or large company. We have two things we control: our time and how we respond to other people. That's it. That's all we control. Control your time, go sit up on the hill, go in the trenches. How do you want to interact with your people that's going to produce the result you seek? And again,
I feel like that 4 hours is such a good thing for us to try.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. It's hard.
That's so good. And I also feel like just giving us that space gives us the ability to look back, and hopefully our bridge is in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I also feel like when you get that opportunity to kind of sit and look back on what you're doing, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, right? And so I love this point that Hudson brings up, which is for you, Jan, having the hindsight to be 20/20 to look back. What are some sort of lessons on resilience or something that you learned that maybe some of us who have yet to walk into the great success that you found should try, or to avoid, or learn ourselves through you?
Yeah, Hudson, I love that question. And, the thing that I learned the really hard way was I could be right, but I was wrong. In other words, I had a boss one time say to me, Jan, do you know who Don Quixote is? He goes, you're chasing windmills. This thing you're trying to get, is never going to happen. Stop it. You've lost credibility with the boss. And I think, part of resilience is this persistence, determination, passion, grit. And part of it is having the wisdom and the judgment to know what are the right things to push on and what are the things, even if you're right. Hey, I'm not going to put in any political chits here because I'm not going to get them back. You've only got so many arrows in your quiver. And that's one of the hard things to learn. And we all learn the hard way is, because as Jeff Pfeffer from Stanford says, hey, job one is keep your job. If you don't have a job, you can't take care of customers, you can't take care of your people, you might not be able to take care of your family. So you've got to decide, hey, is this something that, defies my moral compass, or is this, hey, take the good with the bad. There's no such thing as a perfect culture. There's no such thing as a perfect boss. You make do. I don't know. Is that resonate with you, Kim?
It totally resonates with me because I think sometimes we as humans are kind of always built to find like what's better, what's, how do I get even further? And I think that sometimes you're absolutely right. If you're always looking for the perfect boss, good luck. Because you're going to end up jumping from one job for another until you're 95 years old. So I think sometimes while it's such a great quality for us to have, to kind of always be looking for bigger and better, at some point you just sort of have to look within yourself, which goes back to your self-reliant leadership, and say, I'm in a spot where I'm 85% happy and great, and I have to make up the next 15%. Like that's on me. I can't look for like outside sources to do that.
Yeah. It's always, to me, people, it always happens. I mean, we get to a point with our jobs and our careers and our companies where we just say, hey, is this worth it? It happens on our bad days. It happens sometimes on our good days. And I always say, hey, we always have three choices because we're all volunteers. We are volunteers. None of us have to work at the company we're at. So the three choices we always have is suck it up, deal with it, try to change it. What are all the ways that you can change things, through influence, alliances, making a business case. And again, most people I see trying to change things never even show any numbers. They just try to talk. It's like, show the boss the numbers, figure that out. What's the value? And the third thing, if you can't change it, you have to decide, okay, I'll deal with it. Or, hey, this, my values are no longer aligned here. This doesn't work for me. And then choose to leave. We always have those three choices. And I encourage the people I'm working with, hey, part of leading is getting people to do things they otherwise wouldn't. And that's not just the people that report to you. That's your peers and colleagues. And that's your boss or bosses. And that's where executives really struggle. I mean, most people get to the point where like, I'm really good with my team. My team loves me. And then they realize, I don't really have any friends around me. I don't have support. The boss is coming down on me because they haven't nurtured that relationship. And that's tough.
And those are some great sort of quick questions that we can, I think, regularly ask ourselves to check in, which I think is important.
Yeah. Well,
I think sometimes we do the work. I joke around like January 1. Yeah. Everyone likes to do the work. We're starting off the year, we're doing the work. But I actually like to kind of refresh every quarter. Which is why, I'm saying like, okay, at the top of 2023, I said I wanted to work on my leadership. Okay. I want to sit down with Janet, like have a little check-in. It's now April. Like let's do a little Q1 temperature check. How are we doing with that? Because I think sometimes people are like a set it and forget it. And we have to kind of continue to ask ourselves these questions over and over again throughout the year.
Well, this is not my original thoughts. It comes from AJ Lafley, who was a former CEO of Procter & Gamble. He wrote an article in HBR about the 4 things only a CEO can do. And I think it's helpful for all of us to remember what those are, because I think it also applies to us. And we need to know that the person at the top of the organization is thinking about these 4 things. Hey, interpret the meaningful outside. hey, what's going on in the market? What's going on outside here with customers in our industry? To what business are we in and not in? We can't be all things to all people. We've got to be focused. The third is, balance short-term yield and long-term investment. Just like our family budget, we can't have everything we want. We don't have unlimited resources. And the fourth thing is what we've been talking about, is uphold the values and standards. Look at the professional sports teams. You have to make the roster. Every year you got to make the roster. It's not said at work in the business world, but every day we got to make the roster, because there's people coming on that are, maybe they want to work harder, maybe they want to work smarter, maybe they are smarter. We've got to prove our value, and we've got to figure out a way to market that value with it that doesn't, compromise, and feel like, we're sucking up. But I don't know about you, Kim, but the people I've seen that lose their jobs are the people that failed to demonstrate their value to the organization. They didn't lose their job because they were bad people, that they didn't produce results. They were not good at helping others understand their value. And that's not something that there's no workshops on that. There's no MBA on that, but we've got to pay attention to it.
No, it's that's one that I wish there was classes on it. I wish you could get an instant download, but you can't. But that's why you're here. And that's why we're here to kind of learn these lessons together. So I'm excited to dig into these speed round questions with you, Jan, because I feel like you're going to offer a lot of tactical advice, which I'm eager to get my hands on.
All right. Yeah. Fire away.
Okay. What is the best work-related thing that you have started using or doing lately that you just absolutely love?
I don't know. I love it. I think it's really cool. And it's ChatGPT. I think
yes,
it is an amazing tool. And I can't even, it is a game changer. And it kind of reminds me, when the web really came out, some people were sending each other URLs because there wasn't real good search functionality. And they'd say, oh, go to this website. And you had to type in the whole thing. And it was a game changer. I feel like this is that on steroids. And so
I could not agree more. What are you using it for?
It's like you are going to get left behind. No matter what your job is, if you're not figuring out how to prompt the robot, you're going to get left behind.
What are you using it for the most, do you think?
Ideas. I use it in front of clients. I had a client, a CEO say, I got to get in front of the group and do a motivational speech. And, I really want to get them fired up. I go, well, let's see what the robot says. And we put in the name of the company and said, write a 500-word motivational speech, spit it out. We're at lunch in a restaurant. And he goes, oh, I wouldn't have to change much at all. And I've used it, because I'm a big proponent of observable behaviors for core values. I punched in companies' core values and said, give me 3 observable behaviors for this value. Boom, boom, boom. Most companies don't define the observable behavior for the value that they say is important. And again, if you don't have observable behaviors, how can you have clear expectations about what you want from other people? So I've used it for that. It's pretty cool.
I love that. That's a good one, Jan. See, I knew it. I was like,
there you go. Yeah.
We're also having Dave Burris on next week or the following week. He just did a LinkedIn learning course all about how to optimize ChatGPT. I'm like halfway through the course, but I agree. I'm totally nerding out on ChatGPT. I think it's I'm also very nice to it. I say please and thank you because, just in case I want them to remember, Kim was always really nice.
Well, I even, we're planning a really cool trip later this year. And I spent like an hour and a half, somewhere I've never been. I was trying to find all this stuff. And afterwards I said, and I put a prompt into ChatGPT and it spit out almost the exact same 28-day itinerary that I spent an hour and a half creating. Yeah. It's pretty pretty amazing.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Okay, when you wake up in the morning and you sort of open your email, what are some of the newsletters that you are subscribing to or new podcast episodes that
Yeah.
you're getting notifications about? Just content that you regularly read or listen to that you find very valuable.
I like Dan Pink's been a frequent guest on our podcast. I like Dan Pink's stuff, his videos. He's a class act, and he's always got some cool insight. So, I love Dan Pink. I've been subscribing to, I don't know if I'm getting this right, Chartable. It basically is a newsletter that's charts. And I think that's really cool because it's, bite size, and you can kind of analyze it and dig into it and kind of see trends. But I scan a lot. I'm always, I just consume, news and information and look for trends. And I find at least 3 times a day, I'm sending something to a client, hey, this is exactly what you and I were just talking about. So, yeah.
I love that. Okay. Is there a certain app or software, maybe you use it on your own, maybe you use it with your client, but you just really find it valuable and it's something that you're kind of constantly, that's like your go-to that you use a lot?
Well, I use, this isn't work related, but this is what came to mind. I have a Garmin watch, and it's hooked up to Strava. So I'm a cyclist. So every time I ride, I am competing with me and everybody else that was on that ride. I'm ashamed to say I'm super competitive. So I'm always comparing, and I'm up the hill. Any ride I finish is 600 vertical feet to get back home. So I'm always looking at, how well did I get up the hill, today? So Strava.
Well, I will offer you this. My husband is also very into Strava, and he bikes here in Austin, which Austin is a big bike town. Yeah. We have lots of hills. It's very like bike friendly city. He follows Lance Armstrong on Strava, and that's also a good Strava follow if you bike.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, around here in Denver, we've got a lot of pro cyclists, and I always know if they're a pro because if I'm riding up the mountain and I hear a car coming and it's not a car, it's a cyclist that sounds like a car, I'm like, okay, he passed me because he's a pro. That's the only reason he passed me.
You're like, go on by.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Yeah. There's some superhumans here. That's for sure.
I get that. We'll be superhuman one day, Jan.
Yeah,
we just got to keep working towards it. Speaking of superhumans, are there certain humans, super or not, or accounts that you follow on the social interwebs, whether that's Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram? And maybe they're not even humans, maybe they're brands that you really love, or just their work inspires you, or just kind of every time you see them in your feed, you're like, oh, yes, like that's really valuable, or that brought a smile to my face.
There's 2 with the same last name, but they're not related. Arthur Brooks and David Brooks. Arthur Brooks has a new book out called Strength to Strength. And David Brooks has a book out called The Second Mountain. And both these books are really about, when you get to a certain point, when you've accomplished what you've wanted to accomplish, what do you do then? What's next? And I think it's really interesting work because I work with a lot of veterans who are in transition, and I don't work with a single person, no matter how accomplished, who's not in some sort of transition. That, hey, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm going. This is what this is how I want to be a better human. And I think that's really interesting, that whole pursuit. It's kind of like Sisyphus. We keep rolling the rock up the mountain, every single day. What makes us do that? And, because as when we interviewed Simon Sinek, I remember him saying, you're never going to get there. It's the journey, it's the journey, it's the journey. And I think there's good lessons in that, that a good life isn't something a month from now or 10 years from now, or when I have this amount of money. I mean, I think we got to figure out a good life today. And again, I think that's tied to passion. And we spend a lot of time at work, And gosh, do what you love. Figure out a way sooner rather than later to find deep purpose and meaning in what you do.
It's so true. And the faster you can do that, the better off you
Yeah.
will be in the long run.
Yep.
Well, around here, we love homework. We love homework around these parts. So
Yeah.
I'm curious if you could give us all a homework assignment to do maybe this week or this weekend. Could be to read something, could be to do something, watch something, listen to something. I will put in a plug that I think everybody's homework should be to listen to one of the episodes of the Leadership Podcast. But I'm curious, what homework would you give everybody this week?
One of the first things I do with people I work with is I try to understand what they value, what they hold dear. Because if the values are not prioritized, they conflict. And oftentimes, I always look at it as the 5 F's, family, faith, fitness, finances, and fulfillment, the work. But a lot of times those 5 things get really divided into 2 buckets: time and money. I want to do this stuff. I need to make $150,000. I think if you don't decide what your values are and put them in priority order, it's really hard to make little decisions or life decisions. And there's a link that I'll put in here, and I think we'll ask Shelby, because I don't think that goes to LinkedIn. So if Shelby,
we'll put it in there.
Yeah, if you can put that link in the LinkedIn feed, that's a really good website to kind of sort out what your values are. And I would encourage you to try to get it down to 3. And if you can get it down to 3 and you talk to the most important person in your life and say, hey, is this me? I think you'll find that as you go forward in your endless transitions, it's a lot easier to make, to take the right fork in the road.
That is such a good homework assignment. And you even provided us a link, which makes it really easy to do the homework assignment. So that is in the chat, or if you are listening to this on the podcast, we will include it in the show notes. But we love a good homework assignment, Jan. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate you really did your homework for this today. I'm very, very impressed. So thank you.
Well, I was so looking forward to this. Where can people keep learning from you, following you, getting your nuggets of wisdom?
Yep. LinkedIn is a great place. And our website, if you want to see all the cool videos from our expeditions, it's at selfreliantleadership.com. But if you go to LinkedIn, it'll take you to all the podcast, everything. And, I put out about a newsletter about once a month, and we have a podcast episode every single week with really interesting people. But no, I appreciate it. This was really interesting. I appreciate it. I wish, because I'm doing so much talking, I haven't been able to really read all the comments. But I know people have been participating, and I really appreciate that. And if we didn't get to your questions, feel free to ping me on social, and I'll circle back with you.
That's a good point, because we didn't get to all the questions because there were so many of them, but hopefully Jan will get them back. Maybe you'll write on LinkedIn the answer to the questions. I also feel like Jeff has already been like, this is such a great tool. So we already have people that are taking action on the homework, which is so great. Jan, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. It's an honor to be on the show, Kim. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for coming to hang out. As always, we meet here every single Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern to learn from amazing leaders like Jan and also each other. So I'm so grateful for your time and your space and your energy and smarts that you brought to our conversation. I will see all of you in the coming weeks. This is going to be a really fun month for coffee chats, and I hope that you will join at getcoffeewithkim.com. Until next time, have an awesome week, everybody. Thanks so much.